You have been deceived for years. In almost all poultry forums, agricultural fairs, and breeder groups around the world, there is a massive myth that has been passed down as an absolute truth. The belief that the famous Sasso chicken is an ancient, pure, rustic French breed, an unbreakable genetic line that you can freely reproduce in your backyard to found your own farm. You have been led to believe that buying a flock of these birds gives you the master key to genetic sovereignty, but the biological and commercial reality is completely different. Today we are going to tear down this myth with hard scientific data. We will reveal the true hidden history behind these birds, we will strip down their DNA in the laboratory, and most importantly, we will discover why those Sasso chickens that successfully reproduce in the backyards and pastures of so many countries are not what the multinational companies claim they are. If you have ever thought about crossing these birds to establish a stable breeding line, the information in this video will change the destiny of your farm forever. Let's begin. To understand the sheer magnitude of this global misunderstanding, we must first establish the fundamental difference between a pure breed and a laboratory tool. A purebred chicken, like a Rhode Island Red or a Sussex, is the result of decades of stabilizing selection. They are homozygous for their main traits, which means that if you cross a male and a female of the same breed, their offspring will be entirely predictable, identical in their characteristics, and will maintain the exact same productive performance generation after generation. The DNA of a pure breed is an open and stable book. Conversely, what the modern poultry industry has created over the last century are commercial hybrids or terminal crosses. These are the result of crossing 3 or 4 pure genetic lines, kept in absolute secrecy, to trigger a biological phenomenon called hybrid vigor or heterosis. The result is an F1 bird with explosive performance, but with a fractured and highly heterozygous genome that is specifically designed not to be reproduced. And it is exactly in this second category where our protagonist belongs. The word Sasso is not the name of a breed, but a corporate acronym. It stands for Sélection Avicole de la Sarthe et du Sud-Ouest, a genetics company founded in France in the 1950s. At that time, Europe was facing an invasion of the new, ultra-fast-growing industrial broiler chickens coming from the United States, white-feathered birds that grew to market weight in a single month but completely lacked flavor, texture, and the ability to survive outdoors. French breeders, famous for their demanding culinary tradition, refused to accept their market being dominated by this pale, characterless meat. Thus, the Sasso project was born. The mission was to create a bird that had the hardiness, disease resistance, and meat quality of the old French heritage pasture birds, but with a commercial yield that could compete economically. To achieve this masterpiece of bioengineering, geneticists did not create a new standard breed. Instead, they took robust, heavy traditional breeds, meticulously crossed them with high-production Rhode Island Red lines and other genetic strains kept under strict industrial secrecy. The result was a slow to medium growth hybrid, designed specifically to meet the rigorous regulations of Label Rouge, the prestigious European quality seal for free-range poultry. These commercial Sasso F1 lines are true titans of the industry. If you buy a batch of these first-generation day-old chicks directly from a certified hatchery and provide them with proper management, the performance is astonishing and mathematically predictable. They will deliver a solid 5.5-pound bird in an exact time frame, usually between 70 and 81 days, with a feed conversion ratio that is the envy of any pasture-raised bird. 100% of the flock will reach harvest weight in the exact same week, bone development will be perfect, and the breast meat will have an impeccable conformation. It is a profitability machine calibrated to the millimeter for agribusiness. However, when these formidable F1 birds leave commercial grow-out pens and arrive in the backyards of homesteaders and small-scale farmers in Latin America, Africa, and other regions of the world, a fascinating biological and social phenomenon occurs that has heavily fueled the myth of the pure breed. In many of these places, backyard flock owners buy a first-generation Sasso male and a couple of females, and, ignoring the warnings of the laboratories, cross them with each other. When the chicks of the second generation, the F2, hatch, the breeders look at their brooder and see birds that are apparently identical to their parents. They see red feathers, they see hardiness, and very often they see the most deceptive trait of all, the naked neck. The naked neck gene, scientifically known as the NA gene, is a masterful genetic tool used by corporations in specific rustic lines because it dissipates body heat exceptionally well in tropical and hot climates. The great secret behind this visual trap is that the naked neck gene is extremely dominant. When homesteaders cross their hybrids, the vast majority of the offspring will inherit and express this featherless neck and reddish color. Visually, the novice breeder observes their flock of turkin, or naked-neck chicks, notices the uniformity of the color, and erroneously concludes that the genetics have remained intact, firmly believing that they have managed to reproduce a pure breed. But Mendelian genetics does not stop at the feathers. It works in the shadows, deep within the bird's internal metabolic machinery. This is where we must draw the absolute dividing line between visual performance and commercial performance. The descendants of these backyard crosses, which we could call a backyard landrace or a barnyard mix, suffer an invisible but devastating fragmentation in their profitability. Out in the field, these birds bred for generations have gone through a harsh process of natural selection. They survive severe weather, resist local diseases, and become excellent foraging mothers, something that original industrial lines have often lost. From the standpoint of family food security and subsistence economics, these localized landrace crosses are fantastic, noble animals that fill their owners with pride. But if we take these same backyard mixes to the spreadsheet of a producer looking for commercial profitability, the genetic collapse of the F2 and subsequent generations becomes undeniable. While the F1 industrial hybrid guaranteed total uniformity, in the backyard cross you will see massive weight disparities. In that exact same 8th week of life, one rooster will weigh 4.5 pounds, his brother will weigh barely 3 pounds, and another will barely break the 2-pound mark. The hybrid vigor that guaranteed flawless feed conversion has completely dissipated in the genetic recombination. The barnyard mixed chicken will need 30 or 40 additional days of consuming expensive grower feed just to reach the same harvest weight that its industrial grandparents achieved. Carcass uniformity, which is absolutely vital for selling to restaurants or supermarkets, disappears completely, ruining the financial viability of any scaled agricultural business model. To understand why this financial and genetic fragmentation occurs, we must pull back the curtain and look directly into the eyes of the transnational corporation's business model. This second-generation collapse is not an accident of nature or a random act of nature. It is a brilliant and perfectly calculated corporate design. Large poultry companies do not protect their intellectual property solely with legal patents printed in expensive law firms, but with an ironclad biological lock called genetic segregation. When you buy a batch of Sasso chicks from a distributor, you are not buying the secret recipe, you are buying the already baked cake. That recipe is kept under extreme biosecurity in the great-grandparent and grandparent flocks of corporate facilities in France and other global genetic hubs. These companies invest millions of dollars and decades of uninterrupted research into maintaining pure lines A, B, C, and D under total genetic isolation. Then they cross line A with B to get a hybrid mother, and line C with D to get a hybrid father. The F1 Sasso chick that reaches your hands is the final product of that majestic four-way cross, the ABCD. It is an animal that possesses the maximum possible hybrid vigor, the absolute peak of the biological mountain in pasture-based poultry. But, due to the unbreakable laws of Gregor Mendel's inheritance that we reviewed in the previous episode, that peak lasts for exactly one generation. The moment you cross two of these A, B, C, D individuals, that biological lock is irreversibly broken, and the genes separate, scattering into thousands of random combinations. It is the exact equivalent of taking a high-engineered sports car, disassembling it into 5,000 pieces, putting them in a giant box, shaking it, and expecting another identical sports car to come out when you open it. What you will get is a chassis on one side, an engine that doesn't fit on the other, and wheels of different sizes. The industry designed this system with an overwhelmingly clear commercial purpose: absolute dependence. By selling you a terminal hybrid that is excellent for producing meat but biologically unstable for reproduction, they politely force you to return to the commercial hatchery at the start of every new production cycle. It is, in essence, a biological subscription model. You provide the infrastructure, the starter and grower rations, the risk and the daily labor, and they provide the biological engine every time you need it, thus ensuring their constant cash flow on a global scale while protecting their genetics from being copied. For the ambitious breeder who ignores this harsh commercial reality, the siren song of the Sasso hybrid and its naked neck descendants can become the largest and most exhausting financial trap of their life. Imagine for a moment that you decide to ignore all this and embark on the monumental task of taking those backyard landrace birds from your flock to forcibly stabilize them and found your own pure breed. Remember the valuable lessons from our previous class on selection in the F2 generation. There we explained that, starting from 2 homozygous pure breeds, the stabilization process requires at least 7 generations of ruthless culling, monk-like patience, and meticulous field data recording. Now multiply that difficulty by 1,000. When trying to stabilize a 4-way commercial hybrid as a foundational base, you are not dealing with a simple 4 or 16 square Punnett square. You are trying to navigate an incalculable ocean of millions of genetic permutations. In each new generation, you will see undesirable recessive genes emerge that had been hidden and repressed for decades in corporate vaults. You will suddenly see chickens with severe immunological weaknesses to local viruses, bone deformities that prevent them from walking as they pack on muscle mass, severe nutrient assimilation issues, chaotic feather patterns and colors, and, most terrifying for a breeding program, a drastic drop in fertility and hatch rates due to the lethal activation of incompatible genes. Trying to clean and fix this genomic line will require you to hatch and feed thousands of chicks every year, only to realize in frustration that you will have to cull and sacrifice 95% of them because they do not meet the anatomical and productive standard you are trying to create. The immense cost in bags of starter and grower feed invested in birds that will inevitably end up in the genetic culling bin will ruin your finances long before you even reach the fourth generation. Breeding heritage poultry and creating new stable lines requires solid biological foundations, bedrock of pure and predictable genetics, not the unstable quicksand of hyperheterozygous industrial genetics. So faced with this seemingly bleak outlook, does this mean the Sasso is a bad choice, a commercial fraud, and that you should immediately banish it from your farm's grow-out pens? Absolutely not. The Sasso is a formidable agricultural tool, a masterpiece of modern animal husbandry, and perhaps one of the best creations ever conceived for the farmer. But like any high-precision tool, it must be used strictly for the right job. The great secret to sustained success in poultry farming lies in perfectly aligning your business goals with the right genetics. You should buy and raise commercial F1 Sasso chicks when your primary, hardline goal is the mass production of high-quality meat for the market, rapid rotation of investment capital, and the generation of a constant, predictable cash flow for your business. If you have a restaurant that demands 50 rustic chickens a week weighing exactly 4.5 pounds with prominent breasts, the industrial Sasso is your undisputed champion. In this business scenario, you must assume the recurring cost of day-old chicks as just another fixed operational input, integrating it into your spreadsheet exactly the same way you assume the cost of feed, pine shavings, or electricity. Conversely, you must step completely away from commercial hybrids and seek out true traditional heritage breeds when your vital goal is absolute independence from corporate supply chains, long-term food sovereignty, the lucrative sale of high genetic value hatching eggs, or the immense personal honor of leaving a stabilized lineage as a master breeder. If you want to have a majestic flock that produces its own superior replacements year after year without ever relying on outside hatcheries, you must invest time and money in birds with authentic pedigrees, maintain strict field records, and rigorously apply the genetic selection we have been teaching you. They are two completely different poultry universes, parallel but separated by diametrically opposed financial and biological rules, and the most destructive mistake you can make as a producer is trying to force the rules of one productive universe into the other. And just when you think that understanding and mastering the inherent instability of a backyard hybrid is the upper limit of complexity in modern breeding, we run head-on into a recent, viral, and extremely dangerous trend that is gaining unstoppable momentum in many corners and poultry forums around the world. What exactly happens inside the eggshell when a breeder, dissatisfied with the moderate growth rate of their barnyard mix hens, decides to play God in their coop and crosses the renowned hardiness of a Sasso mother with the monstrous, unnatural, and explosive growth of a hyper-industrial white hybrid like the world-famous Ross 308? We are literally talking about clashing two of the most extreme and diametrically opposed biological assimilation machines ever designed by humanity within a single genetic code. Many inexperienced enthusiasts blindly believe that by uniting these genomes they will get the ultimate super chicken of the new era, a mythological bird capable of reaching nearly 8 pounds in a month while peacefully feeding on pasture and kitchen scraps. However, the head-on, uncontrolled collision of these two hyper-specialized corporate genomes unleashes an internal metabolic storm that defies the basic understanding of most producers. Is this radical cross the ultimate magic bullet for global hunger and absolute profitability, or is it a severe anatomical death sentence that inevitably results in immense animal suffering, sudden heart attacks, structural deformities, and catastrophic economic losses for the farmer? The documented answer to that question is as scientifically fascinating as it is terrifying from an animal welfare perspective, and it is exactly the clinical case study that we will break down in depth in our next episode, where we will analyze step by step the biological disaster of mixing two titans of commercial genetics. Poultry genetics is not a simple weekend backyard hobby where you roll the dice to see what feather color hatches. It is an exact, relentless, and beautiful agronomic science that generously rewards technical knowledge and punishes ignorance and improvisation with severe financial losses. Today we have lifted the heavy veil on one of the biggest and most deeply rooted global misunderstandings in our industry, finally understanding that not all that glitters is gold, and not every vigorous naked-necked chick with red feathers is a solid foundation to build the future of your breeding project. Now you hold in your own hands the absolute power to decide which professional path to take. The path of the highly efficient commercial producer who assumes, understands, and masters the rules of the industrial game, or the noble path of the master breeder who sculpts their own genetic legacy from unbreakable, pure, and predictable foundations. Applied technical knowledge is your best shield and your sharpest tool to avoid being a passive victim of mass misinformation or false romantic expectations that only serve to drain your scarce resources and frustrate your dreams of poultry greatness. I strongly urge you to share this video with all those colleagues, family members, and friends who still blindly believe they can found an immortal breed with chicks bought at the local feed store. because an educated breeder immediately raises the standard, ethics, and profitability of our entire international community. Tell me down below, in the comments section and with total honesty, were you ever a victim of this myth and tried to breed from Sasso birds on your farm? And what exact results did you observe in the weights and sizes of the second and third generation? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join this elite community, hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next and truly explosive analysis on crossing the giants, and leave a thumbs up if this masterclass has brought real and applicable value to your life. To your success, fellow breeder. Until next time.